Stephen Moore is the distinguishing visiting fellow Project for Economic Growth with the Heritage Foundation. He also used to write for the Wall Street Journal. And the Wall Street Journal, Stephen Moore, as you know, put out a scathing editorial about President Trump's attempt to slap tariffs on steel and on aluminum.
Yes, hi, Larry. Well, I did read the editorial. I worked for years for the Wall Street Journal editorial board.
And Stephen, I'll tell you, Stephen, it sounds to me like something that you would have written word by word.
Well, I'm not happy, and I've been very much in favor of almost everything Trump has done on the economy so far, from the tax cuts to the deregulation to the promoting American energy. But from the start, when I started working with Donald Trump as an advisor back about 2 years ago, he and I parted company on this trade issue, and I had hoped that his bark would be worse than his bite. But when it comes to these steel and aluminum tariffs, I think these in particular are highly counterproductive, because it's not going to, in my opinion, Larry, even save jobs. Because, yes, you might save some of the steel and aluminum jobs, but what about the 6 million American manufacturing workers and computer workers and technology workers who use steel in the production of the goods and services that they use? Now they're going to have to compete in global markets with steel that's 25% more expensive than what the Chinese and German and Mexicans are using. It just doesn't make any sense.
Stephen Moore is my guest, economic advisor to President Trump. We're talking about the president's imposition of tariffs on steel and on aluminum. Stephen, he's given essentially three reasons for doing this, and I want you to deal with all three. One of them is dumping. One of them is the alleged trade deficit that we have with all these countries. And the third one is national security, neither of which, in my opinion, is a compelling argument. What do you think? Let's deal with dumping first.
Well, dumping, that's the allegation that's made, especially about aluminum, and they're also saying that the aluminum, that you have these government-subsidized industries in China and other countries. And I have to confess, I don't know a lot about the aluminum market, but let's say they are. So, in other words, their government is subsidizing the sale of aluminum to us. I mean, would we complain, Larry, if they gave us the aluminum for free?
And if they're stupid enough to subsidize money-losing businesses, why should we compound their stupidity by putting tariffs on them?
Yeah, I agree with that. And then, your second argument was about
with trade deficit. And Donald Trump's often talked about this country has a trade deficit with us as if it's a bad thing.
Yeah, so he is obsessed with the trade deficit. And by the way, I really honestly believe Donald Trump's heart is in the right place here. I mean, I think he really does care about the Ohio and the Pennsylvania and Michigan, steel workers and so on. But I think he's just misguided. And on the trade deficit, look, if the economy, when the trade deficit goes down, Larry?
When the economy goes down.
When we have a recession.
Yeah, when the economy goes down.
We have a recession.
Right.
I mean, the trade deficit is almost exactly correlated to growth. When the economy is growing and we've got a lot of jobs, American consumers are spending money, the trade deficit goes up. And, back in 2008 and 2009, when the economy crashed, our trade deficit went away.
Right.
So, the trade deficit went down in the Great Depression. My point is, I don't think what matters is the trade deficit. I do want America to be a producer. I want to save our industrial, might. I want us to have an industrial base. But you do that by creating a level playing field, by cutting your taxes, getting rid of regulations. I mean, I don't understand the timing of this. I mean, everything's going so well with the American economy right now. I just thought the timing was out. But no, we should not worry about the trade deficit because, by the way, every dollar of a trade deficit is a capital import surplus. So companies, foreigners are investing money in America right now, and to get the dollars to invest here, they have to sell us more goods than we sell them, as Arthur Laffer would tell us.
And where else are they going to put their money but the best country, the most productive country, the country with the most stable political environment? That's us.
You got it. I mean, look, Apple is bringing $300 billion back to the United States. That's money that's going to be invested here. But by the way, the phoniest argument of all, can I get to your third argument?
Sure, national security.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, do you know the number one? I bet you know it, but I bet a lot of your listeners don't know it because the media doesn't report this. Do you know what country we import the most steel from?
Canada?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now,
well, Canada is our top trading partner. Most people don't realize that.
Exactly.
And we only get about we only get about 2.2% of our steel from China. So how can that be a national security threat if they all of a sudden stop sending it?
Well, because it isn't, and I think that's a phony argument, and they use that argument because they wanted to be able to invoke these various rules that allow the president to unilaterally impose these tariffs. And by the way, a tariff is just a tax.
That's what it is.
You know that, Larry.
That's
a
right.
tariff is just a tax. Mm-hmm. Consumers are going to pay this.
And Stephen Moore, I agree with you that the president's heart is in the right place. That's why I supported him. That's why I campaigned for him. And I give him a lot of slack, for example, when he says things that are wrong about due process and guns. He's not a lawyer. He's been a businessman. I get that. But he's gone to Wharton, for crying out loud, Stephen Moore. Can you imagine what professors at Wharton are saying right now, privately? Because I understand there's been an edict from the top not to say anything positive or negative about Trump. But I'm telling you, they're gnashing their teeth in the halls right now.
Yeah. Now, look, I do agree with Trump. I had a lot of conversation with Donald Trump on the campaign trail, about trade. And on China, look, I do think China is an existential threat to the United States. They are not an ally. They are an adversary. They're saber rattling in the China South Sea. They've enabled this idiot in North Korea to have a nuclear weapon. And look, if you want to get tough with China and use trade as a weapon with China, I'm open-minded to that. But I don't see why we are threatened by importing steel from Canada and Mexico. And by the way, we sell them steel as well.
Right. The point, one of the points made in the Wall Street Journal article, Stephen Moore, we only have about a minute left, is that everything, as you point out, has been going so well. And now this.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is a negative. I mean, the stock market's fallen by 800 points since he announced these steel and aluminum tariffs. They make everything we produce more expensive. It's going to hurt consumers.
Right.
Maybe it'll save some jobs, but I'm going to make a prediction on your show. This will cost more jobs than it will save.
Oh, I agree with that. And you pointed out the stock market went down. Presumably, Trump considers himself to be a champion of the auto industry. Well, shares of domestic automakers went down as well after he announced these tariffs.
Of course it did, because now they have to compete against German cars and Japanese cars and so on, and with the steel that's more expensive than what Japan and Germany uses. I mean, it just is a strategy for making America great again. I don't think it really adds up.
And Stephen, finally, it's not like we haven't been down this road before. George W. Bush did it in 2003. And the studies show that more jobs were lost than were gained.
And you know what? You know who else did it? Ronald Reagan put some, steel tariffs on early in his presidency.
He sure did.
And when he wrote his book at the end, he said, "It's the one policy I really regret."
Right.
And because it didn't work. And I hope that Donald Trump discovers that lesson sooner rather than later.
Stephen Moore, thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Have a great weekend.
You got it. 888-971-SHG, 888-971-7243. Man, tariffs, steel tariffs. What does Eugene Volokh say? What does Leo Hanian say? UCLA economist. We're talking to him later on as well. I'm Larry Elder.